unrelated. As far as we know.
Small policeman loading. Right, okay, that is 11 o'clock, so we will get started, everyone. Good morning, welcome to Police and Fire Board for December. The order of business is as per the agenda, albeit there was a couple of late items circulated, and I'll pick that up later. The minutes of the previous meeting are there for approval. Does anybody have any matters to raise on the minutes? I don't see any. And then the action log had a couple of items to go through. So I think there was a couple of outstanding items from police colleagues, but I appreciate there's been a bit of a change there. So I don't know if we just want to carry that on. There's items recommended for closure, and the additional item of from Protective Services, I think, was closed off last night with more information from Derek Oliver. Does anybody have any other items to raise in the action log? No, I think we're all happy. Okay, move into public reports. The first public report is Police Scotland Q2 report, and I'll pass over to Greg. David?
It'll be myself, Chair, so thanks, and I will go into the report. Hopefully, I appreciate the report was slightly late in coming in, so hopefully the pages will marry up this time. So I will start at page 9 of the police report, which is headed Protecting the Most Vulnerable People and Missing Persons, which hopefully marries up with everybody else's page numbers. So during Q2, 40 adults, 6 cared for adults, 45 young persons and 13 care experienced young persons were reported missing. We continue to work with partners to support individuals where risk is identified. In total, there were 105 reports made to police during Q2. As previously highlighted, these types of inquiries often place significant resource and financial pressures on local policing resilience. I would stress the number and type of police resources deployed to locate persons reported missing varies on a report by report basis and according to any threat, risk and harm posed. What I would add as well, the division has focused a lot of time and effort in this area over the past 6 months, formulating plans, educating both police officers and staff at care providers and schools to ensure appropriate response to reports and an effort to minimise instances arising in the first place. Secondly, I'll move on to the domestic abuse area. So domestic abuse is a priority for Police Scotland and for all the Midlothian officers. By the end of Q2, there were 641 incidents reporting, which is an increase of 10% on the 5-year average. The number of reported domestic abuse crimes recorded is 276, which is a 23.1% increase on the 5-year average. The percentage of domestic incidents that result in a crime being reported is at 43.1%, which represents a 4.6% increase, on the 5-year average. This statistic reflects a confidence to contact police at an early stage in disagreements, which ultimately do not result in criminality, and seek support from both police and third-party services. For the Q2, detection rates for domestic breach of bail crime is at 23.3%, above the 5-year average, and Midlothian remain committed to targeting violence against women and girls. It'd be remiss of me not to mention we are now currently towards the end of the last 3 days of our annual 16 days of activism to end violence against women and girls. And I would encourage everyone to get involved with the planned events over the next 3 days, if at all possible. So moving on into hate crimes. Official hate crime statistics include all crime types which have a hate crime aggravator added to the crime. The hate aggravators are disability, race, religion, sexual orientation, and transgender identity, with further aggravators of age and variation in sex characteristics under the new legislation. 6 hate incidents recorded during Q2 represents a 18.9% decrease compared to the 5-year average, And during the same period, we've had 71, that is a misprint, it's 71 crimes recorded, representing an 82.9% increase on the 5-year average. Midlothian continue to work with partners to encourage the reporting of hate crimes. All crimes are reviewed by myself to ensure all investigative opportunities are identified and progressed. So that's moving on to the sexual crimes. Tackling serious criminality is a top priority for Midlothian officers. We focus on rape and sexual crime to build public confidence in reporting. During Q2, reports of rape rose by 56.8%, and attempted rape rose by 400% compared to the 5-year average. Due to the sensitive nature of these crimes, we do not comment on specific incidents. Many cases are linked to domestic abuse, and as previously highlighted, most reports in Midlothian are historical in nature, ranging back to 1994. A significant increase in historical reports reflects an increase in victim confidence and seeking support from police and third-party services. All investigations into rape and attempted rape are overseen by a detective inspector, ensuring further inquiries that are carefully scrutinised through peer review to maintain high standards of investigation. The Q2 detection rates for rape is 54.1%, compared with a wider divisional detection rate of 51%. Reports of sexual assault during Q2 are at 8 incidents, which is above the 5-year, 8 incidents above the 5-year average, and the detection rate is 68.9%. So moving on into the drug supply, production and cultivations. Police continue to focus on those who bring harm to our communities, and in particular those who are involved in drug supply, cultivation, production, and the sale of Class A, such as heroin and cocaine, and Class C, such as Valium and Xanax drugs. It has been identified that these have led to an increase in drug-related deaths. During Q2, there was 16 supply of drug offences recorded, representing the 23.8% reduction on the 5-year average. During the same quarter, there were 84 possessions of drug offences recorded. This quarter saw Midlothian community teams execute multiple successful drugs warrants at residential and business properties, recovering drugs, cash, weapons, and stolen goods. These searches were initiated from intelligence provided by the local community and development of intelligence by our proactive officers in Midlothian. During the quarter, misuse of drugs and general evidential search warrants were executed at over 15 different addresses throughout Midlothian. This resulted in seizures of Class A and B controlled substances, including cannabis, cocaine, and amphetamine, all of which with a street value exceeding £200,000. Also, significant stolen property recoveries were made, with one seizure returning 25 stolen vehicles, quads, and motorbikes, as well as large quantities of cocaine. There has been further large-scale seizures which have taken place in Midlothian. However, these will be covered during Q3. Police continue to develop drugs intelligence from the local community. Drugs enforcement requires information from a variety of sources to build pictures and fill in the pieces of the jigsaw. We rely on community intelligence and encourage reporting direct to police by phone, online, or in person, via remote reporting, and obviously anonymously through Crime Stoppers. I would note from my recent visits to community council meetings that the public can sometimes become frustrated by the perceived lack of enforcement from the information they supply. What I would add is we require a specific amount of intelligence before we can move towards applying for warrantry. So I would encourage the members of the public to continue to report to us to give us the intelligence that we require. So that moves us on to reducing violence and antisocial behaviour. Firstly is crimes of violence. Please note with the introduction of the change to recorded crime groups, common assault is now included within Group 1, where previously this was not, resulting in an anticipated increase in year-to-date data compared to last year-to-date. Reducing violence and its impact on our local communities is a priority for the Police Service of Scotland within Midlothian. We work with partners to reduce the circumstances that can lead to violence while endeavouring to identify and arrest perpetrators as swiftly as possible. By the end of Q2, there were 16 serious assaults within Midlothian, representing a 26.6% reduction on the 5-year average. The detection rate is 87.5%, which remains above the wider divisional detection rate of 75.3%. By the end of the quarter, there were 8 reported robberies in Midlothian. This is a 23.1% decrease on the 5-year average, with a detection rate at 75%, which is above the wider divisional detection rate of 56.8%. Also, by the end of the quarter, there were 483 recorded common assaults, representing a 17.1% increase on the 5-year average, and the detection rate sits at 54%. There were 25 assaults on emergency service workers during Q2. This reflects a 31.3% decrease on the 5-year average. That moves us on to the reducing antisocial behaviour. I'll just take a drink of water quickly. So we continue to tackle antisocial behaviour in its various forms with our partners, which include ourselves, obviously, CLLE, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and voluntary partners. And we've continued high visibility patrols in antisocial behaviour hotspots to deter any youth disorder, whilst providing reassurance to our local businesses. Throughout Q1 and Q2, there have been 2,698 antisocial behaviour incidents reported to police, reflecting a 3.7% reduction in this incident type within Midlothian compared to the 5-year average. I would also add that we have a fortnightly tactical action group, which we share the chair with our colleagues in the Fire Rescue Service. This group is attended by partners such as CLLE, Youth Criminal Justice, and third-party sectors when appropriate, such as Tesco and Lothian buses, to allow a coordinated response to antisocial behaviour. What I would also add at this point is just to highlight that not all antisocial behaviour is committed by young people, despite the majority of antisocial behaviour often being termed as youth antisocial behaviour, regardless of the perpetrator's age. So moving on to reducing acquisitive crime. Firstly, we have housebreaking, and given the wide range of acquisitive crime, this priority is covered in 2 sections, housebreaking and dishonesty. During Q2, a total of 48 reports of theft by housebreaking to dwellings, including attempts, were recorded. This figure represents a 32.6% increase on the 5-year average. Recognising the harm and concern housebreaking generates within the community through Midlothian, police are committed to targeting those responsible for carrying out this crime. Throughout Q2, a detection rate of 37.5%, which compares favourably with the wider division detection rate of 28.6%. During the quarter, a total of 22 reports of theft by housebreaking to non-dwelling, along with attempts, were recorded. This figure represents a 37.6% reduction on the 5-year average. The detection rate is 4.5% compared to the wider divisional detection rate of 3.7%. Also, a total of 10 reports of theft by housebreaking to business premises, including the attempts, were recorded. This figure represents a significant 58.3% reduction on the 5-year average. The detection rate is 50% compared with a wider divisional detection rate of 17.5%. Moving on to dishonesty. During the quarter, a total of 1,076 overall Group 3 crimes were recorded. This includes the housebreaking crimes within Midlothian. This figure represents a 23.8% increase compared to the 5-year average. During the quarter, the detection rate was 30.8% and remains above the wider divisional detection rate of 29.2%. Common thefts are 2.4% up on the 5-year average, and the detection rate is 10.5%. In relation to theft by shoplifting, 460 incidents are currently recorded, which is a 51.9% increase. The detection rate for this sits at 43.3%, which is in line with the divisional solvency rate for theft by shoplifting. The increase in reporting of theft by shoplifting can be attributed to proactive work undertaken locally following receiving funding of more than £50,000 by Police Scotland's Retail Crime Task Force. What I mean by this is officers have proactively obtained reports whereby retailers may have not ordinarily reported the matter. Moving on to improving road safety and road casualties. Throughout Q2, there have been 14 less casualties recorded within Midlothian than the previous quarter in 2024, representing a 26% reduction in total number of casualties on Midlothian's roads. Contrary to the record, unfortunately, which is an administrative error, we have had one fatal accident in Q2, and I'm sure you'll all agree that every death on a road is one too many. During the quarter, there have been 12 people seriously injured, reflecting a 25% decrease, which is 4 fewer incidents in the same period. Throughout the quarter, Midlothian officers have continued to increase the number of static speed checks deployments throughout Midlothian, reflecting a 78% increase on the detection rate for speeding offences compared with the 5-year average. So lastly, I'll move on to the executive area and complaints. And you'll see from the breakdown the total number of complaints about the police received in relation to the Midlothian Area Command between the 1st of April 2025 and the 30th of September 25. The breakdown below provides further details on allegations and category types. And as you can see, there's been a 34.3% decrease in the overall number of complaints about police when comparing last year to date and this year to date. To that, Chair, that's the conclusion of the report, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Thanks, David. That's much appreciated. Colleagues, I'll open up for questions and comments. I'll bring in Councillor Snail first.
Thank you very much, David. There's lots of good stuff in there. I mean, the Community Council will be very pleased to know that the speeding detection has gone right up, and I'm very pleased to see that drug detection is being tackled. Curiously, what I want to talk to you about is something that doesn't really appear in the statistics, obviously, at all. And that is this whole problem of guys on bikes doing antisocial things. It's been raised by the Member of Parliament, by several community councils. Recent incident we had where a farmer's fields were completely churned up by bikes. I know this is an issue that's also affected Councillor Curran in the past. We did have quite a lot of success, I think, about 2 years ago, and I seem to remember we were able to destroy bikes. But in this particular instance, that we've been a really good PC working on it, information was given that at Fordell filling station, there was CCTV of these guys who'd done the damage, and somehow that didn't get connected into the system. And I just wonder, where you talk about we can't issue a warrant when we haven't got enough evidence, your problem is you don't go back to the individual, the farmer in this case, because of course he's bound to say you should be trying harder. And so we as councillors get in a difficult position defending the fact that it's not possible for you to be everywhere at all times, and it's not possible to follow up leads if the leads aren't categorical enough.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor. Interestingly, it's a particularly difficult area to police, which I'm sure you can acknowledge, and it's across the UK wide. Rather strangely, despite it quite often getting raised to me by yourselves or through community councils, it's actually vastly underreported as well. We don't actually receive many reports in Midlothian in respect of the off-road bikes or the electric Sur-On type bikes, that despite the being discussed quite often amongst community councils. Rather interestingly, and I'm not only saying this because the commander is obviously on the call and listening in, but we have actually had relatively good success in Midlothian, and it particularly comes down to a couple of individual officers who have really invested a lot of time into it, and as a result, I've had contact from forces across the UK, including Greater Manchester, Merseyside, and a Welsh force that escapes my memory, in respect of how we've had the success that we have in respect of seizing the off-road bikes. But as I said, it has come down to a couple of particular community officers who invested a lot of time and effort. and ultimately that comes from information provided by the community on where these individuals are coming from, and where they're likely to be at certain times. So I can't stress firstly the importance of that information again, and again, it's very much like the drugs aspect. Is I appreciate people can come frustrated by what they perceive to be the lack of action, but the reality is that we need that information to be able to react. And what I would say is I would encourage reporting. As I say, there is a lack of reporting in Mid Lothian in respect of the off-road bike activity. So when you're having these discussions with community councils and members of the public, I would really encourage you to encourage them to make sure they pick up the phone or even fill in the online reporting system, just so we have that information. And I would also encourage them to leave the details, to have engagement with the community officers who can go back to them and get the kind of finer details that they will likely need to be able to action the intelligence that they are providing. I kind of hope that assists in answering your question.
Yeah, I just would like to go a step further. And I hear of developments in CCTV analysis using AI, where you're in the situation where you can't see the number plate, there isn't a number plate, you can't see the face because they were in balaclavas, you can still diagnose the image such that you can make a correlation. So back to the instance I mentioned, which involves a filling station CCTV, or could be actually a farmer's own CCTV. Are we able to go further with this sort of unidentifiable crime, or are we stuck, as I think I got from what you were saying, on leads? I know it was Jimmy's son down the road, he's a bad lad, that sort of information.
Yes, so in respect of AI, it's currently going through a national process in respect of its governance and its ethical use, which at the moment we're not at the point of having that agreement and how we will use that moving forward. As I'm sure you can understand, it's only right that we go through a proper governance process in the first place, just what would be expected from the public when police are utilising such technology. So at the moment, yeah, we do rely on that information from the members of the public telling us who the person is. That doesn't mean that we can utilise the CCTV in its traditional fashion, whereby we know where the individual has been seen, and we can then watch the various cameras to establish if we can find out where the individual ends up, or if any point they've removed the balaclava face covering. So yeah, it's unfortunate at this time it's good old-fashioned policing, but I'm more than happy to provide the specifics in relation to seizures if you find it helpful. And I think what you'll find is that, as I've said, we've had great success in Mid Lothian. We also utilise the smart water spray, which allows us to, if an individual comes by or near to an officer, we spray them with a smart water, which leaves us a kind of DNA on their clothing, which they can't remove. So then if we have information to suggest that it is an individual, David Roke's been driving the bike, we think we've sprayed him, we obviously then have cause to go around to that individual's address, and if we find said DNA on his clothing, that would give us sufficient to progress towards charges.
Just one quickie, if you do actually apprehend someone, are you legally able to confiscate the bike and sell it or destroy it, or what have we done on that front?
So again, it's rather interesting. It's going through a bit of a governance process at the moment. So we can seize it. The reality is that the bike needs insurance to be driven in a public place. Most of these bikes are unable to be insured, which allows us to seize it there and then. It has to be there and then. It can't be afterwards unless they've made off from us. And within that time period, then there's a 24-hour time period we can seize the bike. There is then a little bit of governance at the moment from the police side in respect of what happens afterwards. Usually, for instance, if that was a motor vehicle and an individual was driving without insurance, we would seize the vehicle. They would come along with the relevant insurance documents to prove that they now have it insured, and they would pay a release fee to the recovery company to get that vehicle back. Now, obviously, as I said, some of these vehicles you can't insure them, so there's now a question of, do we return them or do we not return them? So historically we did return them, then we went through a period where we haven't been returning them, and now we're in a current period where that is being reviewed by our legal department to establish exactly where we stand in respect to the legislation. What I would add is, and I've been quite vocal about this at community councils, I do think that the legislation probably needs modernised in relation to this particular issue. I don't think the current legislation we have is sufficient to deal with this problem, which is obviously a growing problem UK-wide.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David. Thanks, Councillor Smail. Very topical issue for us all. David, just on that, so I don't want to prolong the discussion on this, but it's just a point that I made at a meeting a couple of weeks ago around reporting. I completely agree with Councillor Smail. I speak to people all the time who complain about these issues, but they would never dream of using police resources by, phoning 101. They just feel like that's a step too far. But again, it's maybe about advertising the online reporting tools, because I appreciate the data is really important to you around where these incidents happen, and you can't deal with them unless you actually know what's happening. So maybe there's something to be taken away from that. Anyway, we'll park that there, no pun intended. Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, David. Thanks for that report. Very comprehensive report. Just taking on from Councillor Smail's theme, something that's not in the report, but you very kindly send me a message about the reporting aspects pertaining to the violence and any police matters that are occurring within schools. Now, I'll take on your recommendations. I'm happy for the police to report in any way, shape or form they see fit. I know there's a lot of incidents happen in schools that are dealt with in-house, but I do think some sort of cognizance activities of incidents within schools should be brought to this committee. So hopefully in the new year we can start getting some sort of numbers of either in-house incidents or incidents that the police have been involved in within our schools. David, please, if you would. And the second thing, Chair, if I may, thanks for that email about the activities that the police are going to be embarking on over the festive period. And I found that very, very informative and very reassuring. And I'll look forward to seeing an increase in police activity over the festive period relating to retail areas within Midlothian. Thanks, David. Thanks for all your work. Thank you.
No, thanks, Councillor. And I suppose just for the benefit of the rest, in relation to schools, I know Councillor McEwen has been questioning around the data and police response at schools and emergency service response at schools. So unfortunately, the Scottish crime recording system, which is kind of our Bible on how we deal with crimes and how we report and record incidents, there isn't many exceptions within that, but one of the exceptions is when it comes to education establishments, where there isn't necessarily a requirement for police to record crimes or record the incident itself. If education are going to progress the incident in-house, which is unusual, it is one of the only exceptions where that wouldn't ordinarily happen. So my concern was that by police providing the data that Councillor McEwen's asking for, it would omit a large part of incidents which are happening. So my suggestion was I'm more than happy to engage with education at local authority and see if we can establish a simple reporting mechanism that each school can fill in. For instance, that they can record they've had an incident of crime or violence and whether they have dealt with that in-house or whether it was referred to police. And if referred to police, we can then kind of provide the further context of whether it was reported to youth justice and so forth.
Okay, thanks, David. Work to do in the background then perhaps on that one. Councillor Alexander.
Yes, good morning and thank you for that report. Just on the bikes, going back to that, sorry, but private ground, does that mean that farm ground, you know, fields are private ground? Because quite often you see them in a field. And it is just hard to report it, because if you're going up the walkway and there's somebody comes wheeling past you on one of these bikes, it's hard to take any sort of real information in. So my real questions were on shoplifting, and it's really good to see that, you know, the money has come from the Scottish Government to help with shoplifting, to support the stopping of it. And I just wondered, is there an increase because, you know, people are harder up, people are struggling. So I know that you are putting them to the relevant services if that is the case. So I'd like to hear a wee bit more about that. It's quite worrying about the rise in sexual crime. It just seems weird that there's been an increase in sexual crime, but a decrease in drug crime. And I think I read somewhere that, is it Midlothian is one of the highest for sex crimes? I just read that. And the other thing was just going back to Councillor McEwen's question on school violence, and I just wondered about racism as well in schools, whether that has become a problem as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Hopefully I've got them noted down, so if I miss anything, please do just rejig my memory. But so in relation to your first question, for the bikes and private ground, it's a particular complex area, so I'll keep it really brief. I had the unfortunate pleasure of having to write a paper for the ACC a couple of years back in relation to it, and it caused me no end of headache due to the various Scots law and the you're right away. So first and foremost, if somebody is driving on private ground, they should have the landowner's permission. Further to that, though, it is slightly more complex in that the Procurator Fiscal Service uses the test that if members of the public are expected to be there, so for instance, if it is a general, it's accepted that it's a walkway, it's still classed as a public place, and therefore you would be expected to have insurance. So if you were driving about on forestry tracks, for instance, that dog walkers quite often use, the Procurator Fiscal would progress with that as requiring insurance due to the nature of you're likely to come into contact with the public. So I hope it answers that. I'm keeping that extremely brief in the sense that the document I wrote was about 6 pages long, so I'm sure we don't have time to go over every aspect, but I'm more than happy to kind of in the future go over that with you in another setting if you so wish. The shoplifting, yes, that is that's been a great help in respect to the finances we've received to tackle that. We had an initial drive in September, October, and I sought further funding so we could have the festive campaign, which is obviously happening right now. I think it was important to recognise that shoplifting is obviously a complex area in respect of the cause, as opposed to the actual crime itself. I mean, the factors as to why people do it, and two of the reasons that obviously come to mind that I was keen that we look at was the cost of living. If people are doing it as a result of cost of living, or through addiction, if people are doing it to fund addiction. So I thought it important that we kind of look at that and address that. And I had productive discussions with the local authority around a process whereby we can refer individuals if they've been identified as shoplifting through one of them causes or suspected, then we could refer them to the drug and alcohol services, or we can refer them into the local authority, who thereafter can provide support through food sector such as food banks. if it's through the cost of living. What I can say is obviously that's still ongoing and we're still evaluating the overall success of that. But an initial feedback that we've had has been positive. For instance, the MELDAP at number 11, we have referred individuals that they weren't aware of and weren't supporting. So the positive in that is we're now providing support to individuals that previously weren't receiving support. Which I'm sure can only be positive in that sense. In relation to your question around sexual crime, what I would say is it's very much a national picture. Mid Lothian statistics are very much in line with how the picture looks nationally in respect of that increase in reporting. I would stress, and everything points to that being the confidence in reporting, and in particular the historical sexual offences which are now being reported. As stated in the report, some of the reports are dating as far back as 1994, specific for Mid Lothian, and even further back in relation to probably other areas within Scotland. So what I would say is as some form of reassurance is that the picture we're seeing in Mid Lothian is not just specific to Mid Lothian. It is a national picture and in line with the national picture. The school, in relation to your final question on school violence and hate crime, as I said, I scrutinise all hate crime myself. I haven't, and I'm more than happy to go back and look at the specific numbers, but I personally haven't noted a marked increase in hate crime across the schools. It's not something that I've particularly picked up on. Hate crime is categorised as a serious crime, and rightly so. So regardless of this education's take on a hate crime, we would always intervene and have some form of involvement in relation to hate crime. Hopefully that provides some answers, and I see the commander has his hand up and maybe wants to come in on some of them matters.
Thanks, David.
Thank you
Greg,
for
do you want
that.
to come in there?
Thanks, Chair. Please forgive the noise from the builders outside Dalkeith Police Station if it's in the background. So listen, it was really just in furtherance to David's comments. Councillor Alexander, we recently discussed at an elected member briefing some of the proactive work that Police Scotland undertakes in relation to sexual violence, and it's probably just worth flagging some of that proactivity. So as per the report, a huge volume of that violence sits in a domestic space. So a lot of what we're doing at the moment is engaging with young people in a school setting through education colleagues, trying to understand how people at a relatively young age start to form what they believe to be healthy relationships, and trying to give some positive comments towards that, and really trying to challenge some of the relationship advice that perhaps young people increasingly these days find in the online space, and trying to give young folk a sense of what a genuine, real relationship should look like in terms of how you behave towards your partner or other people. And then similarly, there's a couple of proactive pieces of work that I know members on this call will be aware of, but if you consider the Domestic Abuse Disclosures Team for Scotland, and then you consider our domestic abuse question set, a huge amount of that involves us being really proactive when we engage with people that are reporting any form of domestic violence. So it may well be the case that someone reports a domestic argument, for example, so low level of threat, harm and risk in terms of the argument that's happened, but when we engage with that person, we ask a really clear question set and are relatively intrusive to try and safeguard that person from violence. And often what we're finding now is people are reporting historic crimes going back often some years. So a lot of what you're seeing in terms of the volumes that come through in the statistical data is really our proactivity. The same goes for domestic abuse disclosure, which I know we've previously discussed. I know members of this call are really supportive of the scheme. We're seeing increasing numbers of people coming to us asking about disclosures for people that they may feel have been involved in domestic violence in the past. It's a really positive scheme, but again, quite often when you go back and disclose something to someone, oddly enough, the reason for them asking in the first place will be someone's behaved negatively towards them. They'll then start to report domestic violence in their own relationship. So it's a really interesting one in terms of clearly we don't want to see any rises across any domestic violence space and in terms of sexual crime, but equally, in some ways, it's quite encouraging that people are increasingly coming towards us to give details that go back often some number of years, but that has a degree of complexity of the investigation. So it was really just to add that sort of commentary to David's point. In terms of shoplifting, David's spot on. So again, one of the benefits of the money that's come from the Scottish Government is the ability to analyse that in much more detail. So as David says, we'll get everyone committing shoplifting across Midlothian, from those that are genuinely struggling to look after their families, and that's not an excuse for offending, but we need to understand the reasons and the causes, right through to people who are clearly involved in very high level organised crime that are effectively going out to commit crime on behalf of a crime group. So we need to understand that full context to be able to then put something in place to respond to them slightly differently. So some of that money has been pushed into that analytical space to allow us to understand that in a bit more detail, Council.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that additional
Thank you.
information. Just on the statistics that Councillor Alexander was talking about, I do note that we still have an open item on the action log around providing the statistics between historical and current incidents around Group 2 crime. It might be helpful for the board at least to have a breakdown in terms of age as well. I'm very aware that there is an increase in that sort of crime in younger age group, but it's hard to see in the statistics. So that would be helpful. Councillor Curran, you've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, David, for the report. Just a couple of questions, I suppose one more a point and a question, probably for Derek Oliver. When we're talking about antisocial behaviour, I know there's joint working with the police and our housing department when it comes to our tenants in council homes being perpetrators of antisocial behaviour. I, for one, would like to see a much more robust approach in terms of how the council deals with tenants. I mean, we could all cite tenants who are completely abusing their tenancies, and we know we've got a list as long as your arm in terms of thousands of people waiting on council homes who would give anything to have a secure tenancy. Yet on one hand we have a small number of people completely abusing their tenancies and causing havoc for their neighbours and their communities, and I'd like to see the council taking a much more robust approach. I know in the next few months we're meant to be getting a seminar on allocation policy and tenancy agreements, so I just put that on the table for now. Just one question, David, in terms of speeding offences. I did ask a question a few months ago in terms of our speed cameras, and I think I was told at the time, they're all inoperative and I've got covers over them now, and I was told at the time that it's a dynamic approach. However, what I have heard in the last few months is that whether this is true or not, I'm not sure, but I would quite like an answer. It's a financial issue and a dispute between Police Scotland and Traffic Scotland about who's responsible for maintaining costs or certain elements of the maintenance of the speed cameras. So are you able to elaborate a little bit further on why your speed cameras are not operative at the moment?
Thanks, Councillor. My understanding it's in relation to analysis and the review of the road network. So, for instance, as you can imagine, speeding comes up as a regular topic in the community councils, and has been something I've covered off. For instance, with the reduction to 20 miles an hour across Midlothian. So, enforcement by guidance. Police Scotland works on guidance provided by Traffic Scotland, which is ultimately a Scottish Government guidance, and that's where we provide our guidance to officers. The speed enforcement should be the last resort to casualty accident reduction. So enforcement should only be driven by that one thing, which is reducing accident casualties on our road network. So my understanding is a lot of the cameras at the moment are inoperative due to a current review on that process and the information we currently have to establish if they are relevant and still should be where they are, and they shouldn't be operating if that information doesn't exist. Feeding that into the regular kind of speed enforcement, for instance, within the 20 miles an hour, a common misconception is that police won't enforce the 20 miles an hour. That is not the case. It's not that we won't enforce the 20 miles an hour, is that our enforcement has to be based on where we're most likely to get the best results in relation to reducing casualties on our roads. The reality is, for instance, in Midlothian, we don't have an accident casualty profile within our 20-mile-an-hour zones. That's why we don't regularly enforce the 20-mile-an-hour zones, because that profile doesn't exist. So I hope that answers, and I'm more than happy to do some more digging unless the commander has the exact answer, just to reaffirm that. But my understanding is it's based on a current review of the profiles.
Yeah, I would just add that purely to answer very categorically the councillor's question, Stephen. So it's certainly nothing to do with disputes or arguments over who funds or who maintains camera equipment. As David said, the data is reviewed on a regular basis. So again, for some views might be this is counterproductive. Effectively, the review will say, has the camera been successful, for want of a better expression? Councillor Curran, has it done its job? Has it brought down those road casualty stats to a point where actually the road looks like it's a safer place to be? And it causes then us collectively to look at, are the cameras that are fixed in the right place, or are they not? And probably for a lot of our camera sites now, it's probably moved on from the position of how much money was invested in putting them there to that fixed site, that has it changed that behaviour, but it's pushed the behaviour somewhere else in our council area. And are we perhaps able to use some of the more mobile cameras in a better way and invest heavily into that space to allow for a more satisfactory return? I think it's probably fair to say for lots of road users, they adjust their behaviour knowing that a camera is in a fixed site, and then perhaps their behaviour then goes back to the normal antisocial behaviour as soon as they're out of that site. So I know it has caused a number of questions across various different localities, but if all the stats say that fixed camera has been successful, you will often find that it's then covered over because it's done its job, and they'll review then whether it should remain in that place or whether it should go somewhere else. So whilst it's not an argument over money, clearly a fixed camera is a very expensive option with a lot of infrastructure that has to put in play, and perhaps better spending the money on the mobile cameras that can be moved around the council area and get a better result. But certainly there's no argument over cost, Councillor Curran.
Thanks, Chair. If I may come back in briefly, just no, I get that question about displacement and the change in behaviour, or moving that behaviour. So if it's evidence led and there is evidence that actually the roads at certain points where cameras have been inoperative are becoming unsafe, that would become under review, and it's a possibility that camera could come back online again.
Yes.
Yes, nice short answer like that. It's a very good point, David, about the 20-mile-an-hour zones as well. I think one of the things I'm always struck by is the 20-mile-an-hour zones are policed essentially by other drivers. And quite often when I get frustration about 20-mile-an-hour zones, it's people are frustrated at people that drive at 20 mile an hour. Irony. Councillor Curran, you had a query on housing, which I know relates to Derek Oliver's previous role. Derek, are you happy to take that away and have a conversation offline if need be?
Yes, it is something that we work closely with the police in terms of our council tenants, in terms of warnings being issued, both in terms of the police and in terms of housing, but we can address it through the briefing that Councillor Curran alludes to as well. Thank you. Okay,
thank you, Derek. Okay, thank you, colleagues. I think that was a really good scrutiny of the Q2 police report. And with that in mind, oh, sorry, Councillor Alexander, did I miss your hand? Apologies.
Sorry, I thought I had it up and then I realised I didn't, so apologies for that. Yeah, it's just a really quick question. I think it's kind of been asked, but I would like a sort of definitive. I heard at another meeting that I was at that if there's no accidents in a certain place where a camera has been in operation, and then there's no accidents in that place, then it's hooded, as you've already mentioned. Is there a number? Is there a time period, over a time period, or is there a number, or whatever? Is there something that you go by that says, okay, we'll put a hood over that camera now?
The sites are continuously, including the mobile sites, are continuously reviewed, Councillor. I'll be completely honest, not working in that world, I don't know the specific timeframes that they utilise, but what I would say is that it's a continuous review. And as the commander mentioned, the cameras that they've hooded, they will have a set period that they will be looking at to review what effect that hooding of the camera has had. So I don't know the exact time period, but yes, there is time periods.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, David. That's helpful. But it would be good to know what the trigger is. I think that's what Councillor Alexander was asking, the trigger for removing or unremoving, but you can get back to us on that. Oh no, your hand is down. Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Okay, moving on to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Q1 and Q2 report now. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it is just still morning. Group Commander Steve Oliver, Head of Prevention for Mid Lothian, East Lothian and the Scottish Borders. I've got a couple of updates before I go over the report, and unfortunately, you've only got me to listen to today. So I'll begin with that. Area Commander Mark Pinkham has recently retired from the service, and his replacement will be Temporary Area Commander Murray Dalgleish, who actually takes up the post today, but unfortunately he's already committed to a course this week, so he's looking forward to catching up with you as soon as he can. Murray was previously Head of Prevention for the City of Edinburgh and brings a wealth of skills and experience to the role. He's also worked in the area previously, so he knows the challenges, opportunities and our priorities. I'd just like to give you a brief update on our local plans. As communicated previously, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Board agreed to postpone the development of new local fire and rescue plans due to significant operational challenges. This decision reflected the budget allocation at the time. Local areas have now been asked to begin reviewing their existing local fire and rescue plans, and this will support the delivery of the 2025 to 28 strategic plan. Assess the progress within each local authority area and identify priorities for future plans. It will also reaffirm our commitment to public service reform and ensure robust alignments with key local partnerships to deliver enhanced collaborative outcomes for the communities that we serve. It's anticipated that we will share the outcomes of the review with the relevant committees during the first half of 2026, with updated local fire and rescue plans presented in subsequent reporting periods. Before I move on to the report, just to give you an update on the new Dalkeith Community Fire Station project, which you may have heard some rumours around. I wouldn't want to share too much in the way of names or figures at this time, but in short, the assigned lead contractor made an attempt to increase the cost significantly, literally as the first spade was going in the ground. They must have assumed we would just pay to avoid delay. However, in the current financial climate, this could not be allowed to happen, and an alternative contract has now been awarded elsewhere. Obviously, this will lead to a slight delay in completion of the project, but we're confident it will not be more than an extra 6 months, which is well worth the considerable saving from the previously increased price. As work progresses, we expect to share a proposed completion date with you by our next meeting. Moving on to the Mid Lothian performance report for Q1 and 2, 1st of April to 30th September 2025. Within the summary, you can see we've attended a total of 653 incidents, which consisted of 286 fires and 113 non-fire incidents. You'll also see we've attended 244 false alarms. However, only 68 of these were unwanted fire alarm signals, referred to as UFAS. The bar chart goes on to provide a breakdown of incident types, with outdoor fires still the most common. Total figure of 653 incidents is an increase of 147 from the same period last year. However, this is largely due to an increase in outdoor fires, some deliberate but more accidental, of 119 from the previous year. We have no evidence to suggest this was anything other than the good weather, particularly within Q1, but clearly the weather will continue to bring challenges to us. The interagency figure of 65 incidents includes providing support for both the police and ambulance service, with gaining entry to property for persons thought or known to require assistance, or attending a Scottish Ambulance Service incident, such as difficult extrication or cardiac arrest, where we have resources closer to the address. This figure will continue to increase as we support our partners responding to an ageing population increasingly choosing to stay living in their own homes. Section 2, the trends. We've added some additional trend lines in Section 2, as feedback suggested that these were found to be a valuable snapshot. They continue to show a general positive move across all areas, both compared with Q1 and 2, 24-25, and over the previous 4 years. other than deliberate fires, which I will go on to cover in section 6. Section 3, accidental dwelling fires. Number of accidental dwelling fires within Midlothian is still relatively low at 19 for Q1 and 2, although this is an increase of 2 from Q1 and 2, 24-25. But more importantly, as discussed at previous meetings, the severity of these fires continues to reduce year on year, with most either limited to the item first ignited or restricted to just smoke damage. This is also the first reporting period where we have not seen any fires caused by smoking materials. Whilst these outcomes can be attributed to changing habits and lifestyles, the statistics confirm the early warning provided by smoke detection and the greater understanding of fire safety measures like closing doors at night are still significant factors. However, cooking appliances still remain the main cause of fire in the home. Our community action team and operational crews continue to undertake home fire safety visits to provide fire safety advice and, where appropriate, fit interim smoke detection. And I'll cover this more in section 10. Section 4, accidental dwelling fire casualties. The aforementioned reduction in the severity of fires has in turn shown a reduction in both the number of casualties, with just 2 from the 19 incidents, but also the severity of injuries. Both were treated for slight smoke inhalation by firefighters at the scene, with 1 taken to hospital just for precautionary checks. Any serious injury or fatality is investigated by our fire investigation team, with findings used to direct appropriate community education, helping reduce the risk of similar incidents and feed into the Public Protection Committee learning review process. Section 5, non-fire casualties. This section includes the casualty numbers from RTCs, special service calls, for example, persons trapped in machinery, and also incidents where we are assisting partner agencies. A breakdown of the nature of injuries is provided. For note, the 5 casualties recorded under the not known were where other agencies take the lead, and due to increasing GDPR, we no longer have access to that casualty information. Unfortunately, there were 4 fatalities during this reporting period. 1 was a water-related incident, and we continue to deliver water safety education and events as detailed in section 12. The other 3 all appear on our statistics from supporting other agencies, for example, a cardiac arrest in the home, and are not attributed to our primary role. Section 6, deliberate fires. We've seen an increase in deliberate fires from 107 in Q1 to 24-25 to 153 in this reporting period. The report provides a breakdown of the property type, and it can be seen the vast majority are outdoors. The graph also shows the key times of day for instance being in the early evening, and this increase is most likely due to the good weather we experienced during this period. It should be noted, however, that the 4-year trend still shows this figure to be below the average, and the low numbers last year were again likely to be as a result of poor weather. We continue to engage with the wider community, including schools, youth and other groups, and work throughout the year with key partners such as Police Scotland, the Council and the Third Sector to support the delivery of key safety messages directed at the relevant audience. This includes fire-related antisocial behaviour talks and presentations. When fires have been started deliberately and the perpetrators are identified, we're able to offer one-to-one support from a trained fire safety support and education advisor. Section 7, non-domestic fires. This section relates to all fires involving premises other than domestic dwellings, both deliberate and accidental. Midlothian only had 7 incidents over the reporting period, which is the lowest figure over the 4-year trend. The report shows 4 of these incidents were limited to the item first ignited or contained within the room of origin. The 2 deliberate acts were an office premises and a sports pavilion. Fires in premises that fall under the auspices of the Fire Scotland Act 2005 attract a post-fire audit. This involves a thorough inspection of the premises by a fire safety officer, with any highlighted deficiencies communicated to the duty holder of the property. Section 8, unwanted fire alarm signals. We continue to see a significant and welcome reduction in mobilisations for unwanted fire alarm signals, with just 68 for Q1 and 2. This has reduced blue light journeys and increased crews availability for other emergency calls, prevention activity, and to complete essential training. It also helps reduce disruption and impact on productivity to the businesses concerned. The remaining call numbers are now holding at approximately 35 per quarter. As can be seen in the report, these are mostly premises with sleeping risk, where we'll always provide an emergency response due to the risk. We continue to advise and support duty holders to reduce these calls whenever possible. Section 9, road traffic collisions. Again, these have reduced from Q1 to 24-25, with only 11 in this reporting period. RTC casualties are also significantly reduced to just 3, with only 1 suffering serious injuries. We continue to work with partner agencies to reduce the number and impact of RTCs in the area, and I will cover this under section 12. Excuse me. Section 10, home fire safety visits. During the reporting period, 133 home fire safety visits were completed. Although this number is significantly lower than the previous reporting period, our new approach is person-centred, focusing on the individual, including lifestyle and the required support, rather than prioritising based on grading the property. As a result, we are now reaching the households we consider to be at the highest risk, and our incident statistics would appear to support this course of action. Visits are still available to members of the public through self-referral, either via our website or free phone number. Based on the information they provide, they will either be sent a fire safety booklet containing personalised fire safety guidance or will receive a visit. For partner agencies, we're still asking them to sign up to a data sharing agreement, which will keep us in accordance with GDPR, strengthen the referral process, and also allow for signposting back to our partners. Until this is in place, partners can still refer via the website, free phone number, or emailing using egress. Any safeguarding concerns identified during visits are referred to our partners within Social Services and Police Scotland when appropriate. Section 11, Fire Safety Enforcement. Our experienced and highly qualified fire safety officers have conducted 97 routine fire safety audits during the reporting period, as well as one specific visit for a post-fire audit. They've also consulted on 8 premises, supporting the local authority with short-term let applications. We've also provided support to the premises responsible person at local authority buildings, including schools, to ensure that legislative requirements are being met. Section 12, Community Safety Engagement. Working with our partners in Mid Lothian, we have identified a number of youth engagement initiatives and activities. Schools and youth groups provide the main audience, and the activities are delivered using various methods, including face-to-face presentation and/or social media. Our road safety focus has been on older drivers, who, whilst not usually involved in the higher speed incidents that we attend, are more often involved in minor incidents which, due to age-related bone fragility or age-related complications, can still result in a hospital visit. These are undertaken in conjunction with Police Scotland at sheltered housing complexes and appropriate shopping locations. We've delivered several water safety events, both at key incident-related locations and to the local schools. We continue to provide risk recognition training to partners by the Eastern Mid Lothian Public Protection Office, as well as supporting partners tackling drug and alcohol-related issues and incidents. As you'll be aware, bonfire preparations and outcomes will feature in our next report. However, our partnership bonfire plan was shared with members at the end of October, and I'm happy to report that we had very few incidents of any significance, with only a couple of reports of antisocial behaviour towards fire crews. I'd like to formally thank Police Scotland for their support to our crews at all times, but particularly during the bonfire period. A full update and stats will be included in our Q3/Q4 report. That concludes the delivery of the Mid Lothian performance reports. I'm happy to take any questions relating to detail within it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. That was really helpful. And also from council point of view, I know that we done a bit of partnership working in terms of the run up to bonfire night, and it does seem to have been fairly successful, and it's been interesting to see how that's changed across the country, with some councils reporting a decrease and some councils reporting an increase in negative behaviour. Councillor Smale.
Thank you very much for that. And as with the police report, the reduction of everything to numbers kind of ignores the incidents that really hit us as councillors. The obvious case, and I apologise to Derek Oliver, who's heard this speech before, was the burning down of Roslyn-Lee, in which we've not had any report as councillors from the fire authorities. Now, it's quite possible that between you and the police, the thing is sub judice and inquiries are ongoing. We previously noticed things like, the Glasgow School of Art going up, and so my concern is about these very important cultural assets Mid Lothian has, where there's nobody in the house at night, almost contrary to your policy. They're actually very vulnerable to this increase in fire raising that we've seen both in your report and also the questions of arson in the police report. I can think of about 7 major houses in Mid Lothian where either there is nobody living in them, or there's perhaps a widow living in them who's perhaps jetting around the world half the time. And these are especially vulnerable. With the world of CCTV, that perhaps helps, but I would have thought it would be sensible for these high value assets to be specially audited to make sure that we're doing everything we can to prevent another disaster. You will have noticed at the weekend that a Grade B listed church at Pollokshaws was burnt to the ground. So these assets are particularly attractive to arsonists.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, as far as the Rosalind Lee is concerned, I don't have any specific details on that at the moment, and I suspect that's because our teams are still looking into that. As soon as I've got more details on that, I'll be happy to share with you our thoughts at that stage. The type of properties that you're talking about, in some cases, they still class as domestic properties, so they would be eligible, if you like, for a home safety visit. And if it's, to use your example of an elderly widow living alone, then the home safety visit should take that into account and give appropriate support to try and keep that person as safe as possible in their home. The premises that are empty, in some cases, they come under empty domestic premises, in which case we've got very little control or influence over anything that happens with them. Where they are covered under the Fire Scotland Act as a relevant premise, then these type of premises are audited. If they're not being used for anything, that tends to be the issue. But they are given a fire safety audit and they are given advice to try and keep those premises as safe as possible. But ultimately, that responsibility lies with the responsible person.
The obvious case where we have full responsibility as council is Vauquerie, where the lodge house is no longer occupied. And of course, many people are aware of the existence of this asset that can be easily got at in the night hours that appear to be the principal time for fire raising. So I'd encourage Derek and yourselves to get together on that specific case just to show that we are alert as a council to this risk. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I mean, we also do, the local crews will do familiarisation visits that we used to refer to as 11D because it was part of the Act, but it's now just generally a familiarisation visit to make sure that they are aware of the premises, how to gain access should they need it, where the water supplies are. But that is a little bit stable door in that they're preparing for attending an incident. But we do as much as we can really to support premises like that are empty. But ultimately, as I say, it's a difficult job, and it's something that we can certainly tie in with the premises responsible person to give a bit of additional support, which, as I mentioned in the report, we've recently done as far as school premises are concerned, and given head teachers and responsible persons a bit of additional advice and support with keeping them buildings secure and safe overnight and over the weekends. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. That's helpful, although I will tongue-in-cheek suggest, Peter, that if somebody can afford to jet around the world, they can perhaps afford their own security, but I'll park that there. Derek, did you want to come in on that point before I take in Councillor McKeown?
Yeah, it was just to give Councillor Smale the assurance that work is ongoing. We have fully fire risk assessed the property. Actions have been undertaken, and I do know that our fire safety officer, who's an ex-fire service firefighter, is engaged with his colleagues in the fire service just to ensure that those measures are being taken, given the vulnerability of the property, as Councillor Smale highlights. Thanks.
Thank you, Derek. Councillor McKeown.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that report, Steve. Quite comprehensive. Gives me comfort to see that you are working closely with the council, with Mr. Oliver's department, and specifically doing fire safety audits. But what concerns me is a 26% increase in the fire safety enforcement. Now, out with domestic properties and council properties, is there a protocol for visiting places of licenses, such as public houses, restaurants, places of entertainment, to make sure that the fire enforcement and their firefighting equipment is in place, and they do have a fire safety plan? Is that something that we can refer to you, or is that something they self-refer, or is that something your officers do on a rota basis or a programmed visit basis, please?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, certain premises that we consider to be high risk would be the wrong word, because they're not particularly high risk now because of our efforts, but high impact is probably the best way to describe it. So an example being a care home. So a care home would attract a fire safety audit every year as an annual inspection to make sure that it meets the required standard. In addition to that, it would get visits from the local crews to make sure they were familiar with the premises and the location of residents that may need additional assistance in leaving the premises. And then it's a sliding scale from there, if you like, of the type of premises, the perceived risk as to how often it's audited. So premises that are already in the system will get audited between 12 months and 5 years when they'll come up for a revisit. And we have obviously premises continually being added to the system, but there's also premises that are continually being removed from the system depending on changes of use and things like that. So in short, we have a rolling programme to visit everywhere, but certain premises don't get visited as frequently.
So can I ask, Chair, if I may, what was the driver for the 26% increase? What was the most prevalent enforcement there on the 26% increase? Was it private premises, or was it domestic premises? Was it just a mixture of both?
So that's premises that we've audited. So essentially that's just extra work that we've done. We've been even better than we are normally.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so certain premises will come up through, as an example, if we get a fire in a school, that's led to a bit more focus on school premises. So there's been a few more specific visits done along that line. So things that may have not been due for inspection for another couple of years have been visited a little bit early. Or it may be as simple as some audits not taking quite as long, and auditing officers have been able to get around more premises in the time they've got available to them. So it's a positive rather than a negative.
Thanks, Steve. Another couple of hands up, so I'll go to Diane first and then Stephen.
Thank you, and thank you for that very comprehensive report. It just gives me a lot of confidence in what you go about. I mean, there's so many areas covered, from, people that are elderly people, which I am now, in road traffic accidents and how they are more vulnerable, to visiting people who are in heart failure or heart distress, all sorts of things. So it really gives me a great heart that I feel confident in what you're doing. So it was a great report. I also like the way that everything was reported. The bar charts and the graphs, they were very, very easy to understand. So just thank you for the report. It was really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, Councillor Alexander. I agree, and I did mean to comment about the presentation of the report. I do like the way it's changed and presented. It reads very well and it's easy to understand. Councillor Cunham.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on from Councillor McEwen's point, Steve, it did used to be the case that when you say this 26% increase, that it's extra work carried out, but did used to have in the reports a trend how you were performing against target in terms of the fire safety visits. Is that something that will return to the report, just so we can see that actually that if that 26% is an increase, or if it's just bringing it back to target?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we do. We have a notional target, if you like, which is 122 audits per auditing officer per year. So obviously that's slightly dependent on how many auditing officers we've got. And as an example, if we get a significant incident in a hotel somewhere, for example, an auditing officer as part of the post-fire audit process could be tied up with that investigation and audit for, well, potentially up to 6 months. So all of a sudden, 60 plus audits potential drops off the system. So while we always try and avoid that and bring additional staff in to backfill those gaps to maintain our notional target, it is very much a notional target, just because it can be anywhere between half a day to undertake an audit or 3 days on average, depending if they find lots of issues, because obviously we try not to take prohibition action, closing places down. We'll try and work with the premises responsible person to get them to a safe standard, because it's better all round to approach it that way. So it's really just around the timescales that things take. But it would be relatively easy within the narrative, within the report, for me to include what our current sort of snapshot target at that moment in time would be and how we're performing against that, just to give an idea of how we're performing against the last reporting period. But it would be a continually moving feast.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. That would be helpful. Steve, I just have one question, which is around the unwanted fire alarm signals. Back in the day, Midlothian West used to always top this because of the retail units, and it seems to have come right down. So I wondered if there was some preventative work or something that's got behind that. But I do notice the Pennycook is extraordinarily high, and I wonder, and I don't expect you to have this to hand, but I wonder if there's particular premises that are repeat offenders that are perhaps making that spike, but any context that you had around that would be helpful.
Yes, the biggest chunk of reduction has actually been down to how we respond to premises, in that if there is a responsible person on site, then we'll ask for confirmation that there is a fire or isn't a fire, rather than just responding immediately. Obviously, if there isn't anybody on site, then ultimately we would respond. And if it's a known sleeping risk, to use a fairly generic term, then we'd respond automatically with the full level of response. So as you can see on the property type table within the unwanted fire alarm section, there's 18 incidents for hostels, 12 incidents for hotel motel. You're correct, I don't have the actual breakdown immediately to hand, but I suspect some of these will be additional premises where we're accommodating either homeless people or other people that need temporary accommodation for various reasons, and the fact that that's a transient residency, we tend to get more false alarms. People aren't as aware how sensitive the system will be and things like that, and because of the nature of the premises, we're always going to respond to that. So that may have seen an increase within that area, but generally, if we get repeat offenders, to answer the other part of your question, then again our fire safety officers will attend those premises and give advice and support to try and reduce those numbers, even if that's something as simple as moving a toaster to a different location, so it's not directly under the detection. But we'll do a fair bit of fairly basic work that helps reduce those figures.
Okay, thanks, Steve. That's helpful. Councillor Alexander. Oh no, sorry, your hand's a legacy hand. That's fine. That's okay. Okay. Thanks, Steve. I was going to say fire colleagues, but there is only one. So thanks, Steve, for picking that up today. That was really helpful. Really positive report. Great work.
Thank you.
Okay, last public report is the Protective Services Q2 report, Derek.
Thank you, Chair. This paper illustrates Q2 performance across our protective services. Page 1 details the liquor and civic licensing activity covering a range of sectors, and no formal enforcement considered necessary regards workplace health and safety. Continued high number of public health service requests with 98% response rate. Our emergency planning and resilience team continue to work on our organisational preparedness, working with our partners. Safety Advisory Group, including representation from our police, fire and ambulance services, considered 6 events at meetings in this quarter, with a number of recurring events with no material changes to their planning, which were approved in consultation. Trading Standards continue to work with police targeting illicit cigarettes, with 10,000 cigarettes seized from 2 premises this quarter. And in terms of parking notices, Q2 had a reduction owing to parking attendant absences and holidays, and I am informed that the situation has returned to normal deployment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Derek, and thanks for that report. Councillor McKeon.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Derek, for this report. My question, you maybe not be surprised to hear, is on trading standards. If I can bring your attention to page 37, where the item states trading standards campaigns joint working initiative details. Police join trading standards and tobacco detector dogs to visit 5 premises. I know within my ward, one particular premise was visited 3 times. Now, I'm just wondering, Derek, I'm not saying it's a waste of trading standards time and the police, but where does this cease to continue to be necessary, i.e., what further powers can we take? Because on each visit, I've had a report from Trading Standards that illegal substances were confiscated from the premises on each occasion. So the one premise 3 times leads me to suggest there must be some other powers we have to try and mitigate this serious offending. And it's recurring now, and it's known, and I can talk to you offline about it further, but I have no reason to suggest that this activity ceased. So, I mean, what more can we do, Derek, to try and save resources and put an end to this type of activity?
Thanks, Councillor McEwan. So in terms of our trading standards teams, they do the joint operations, and can involve the HMRC as well. So any that are which tend to be genuine cigarettes but haven't had the duty paid, HMRC will take the lead in terms of any enforcement action in those cases. In terms of counterfeit or illicit cigarettes, and those are the ones that are produced without any regulatory oversight, and those are the ones that can present a health risk. Trading Standards will lead on that case, and I can assure you that we are robust. We do submit our reports to the Procurator Fiscal, and it's the Procurator Fiscal at Crown Office who proceeds in terms of enforcement against individuals. We will work with police in terms of licensing, whether it's licensed premises or otherwise, so that the full range of enforcement powers are open, and it's a case of each individual service, or indeed collectively, reporting to the Procurator Fiscal. If anything was linked to a licensed premises, we would have the option to then be able to discuss fit and proper persons, etc. But what we do often find is that the business will change hands, which then starts an issue for us to then re-regulate the premise. And we just hope and anticipate that the change of ownership, that the person is operating reputably as opposed to the previous owner. But again, just to say, all the powers that we use in terms of our trading standards, we continue to robustly enforce where we can, as I say, either individually as a local authority trading standards, or collectively with HMRC and our police colleagues.
Yeah, I'm sure enforcement's taken place, Derek. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but what I'm questioning is the time and the effort that's been put into these enforcements, with as far as the community is concerned, no reasonable action taking place on the face of it, i.e. the premises are still trading, they did change ownership, enforcement was engaged again and proved to be successful in what they found. So we need to, I don't know where we draw the line under this. Is it the police that have the power? to close down this activity, or I mean, something's got to be done to eradicate this situation. And on the face of it, the community are telling me that they don't see much happening on the surface.
You know, on your last point, is something that we could publicise more in terms of the action that we are taking, so that those legitimate businesses feel assured that the action is being taken against those that aren't operating in compliance and conformance. But you know, in terms of graduated approach to enforcement, there is zero tolerance. Wherever our regulatory services find an offence of this nature, they will take the highest form of enforcement that is open to them, and then it's left to the Crown Officer and Procurator Fiscal Service and the court system ultimately to lay charges and then provide a sentence that's appropriate. Now, what you would probably find then is, you know, if it's then going to be a repeat offence, that the gravity of the sentence then increases. But we are operating within the powers that we currently have. And as I say, there are other options available depending on the nature of the business that it's operating from.
So I suppose the answer is the intelligence received, keep bringing it forward and keep ensuring that
Yes.
measures are taken for inspections. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Smale next and then Diane. Oh, you're on mute, Peter.
Monday morning. Derek, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about pavement parking. Obviously, for staff reasons, we had a drop from 286 in Q2 last year to 99 this year in terms of pavement parking. And I've spoken to you about a particularly bad example in my ward, but where essentially the pavement's been used as an extension to a workyard. But looking at the problem generally, one of the things I hear is that where people are actually obeying this law, they then start parking on the road, and that means that emergency vehicles and buses have trouble getting past. And I'm not sure there's an easy answer to this. The second leg of this is sometimes I get, pardon me, an individual basically wanting to have a go at their neighbour for unreasonable parking. And if we started to take up all of those, I think it would be quite vexatious in terms of our resource. So is the pavement parking universally applicable in Midlothian and enforceable, is the question in practical terms? And secondly, if it isn't, what is our policy in terms of priorities to make sure that the pavements are not abused, that people can get past on them, and at the same time we make provision that the main carriageway is also still usable?
Thank you, Councillor Smale. So yes, the pavement parking restrictions are universally applied across Midlothian. However, we do prioritise areas where that would impact on access of emergency vehicles, waste vehicles, and in particular if it's going to impact on the safe mobility of those with buggies or in wheelchairs, etc. We do, whenever we get a complaint or a service request regarding the actions of individuals or groups in terms of vehicles and where they're parked, we will deploy, we will ask the parking attendants to attend that area. In some cases, we will well, in all cases, enforcement will be undertaken, and in some cases we will consider in terms of ongoing engagement with the neighbours. So the particular aspect that you've talked about, if there's vexatious complaints, the parking attendants or indeed a road safety team will engage with the neighbour to try and, you know, induce a bit of behavioural change and appreciation of their actions. In some cases they maybe don't have consideration or given it cognizance. In some cases it can lead or be stemmed from neighbour disputes. So we have always said that it would be applied universally. We have no exemption areas at this point. There are some areas where parking attendants are having to attend and engage with the residents of particular streets. The example that you cite in your ward is being progressed, and parking attendants we're tasked to go out and have asked for that information as to when they attended and what action has been taken. And Road Safety are looking at the layout of that, and in terms of creep and regarding the pavement and what that looks like, that's specific. I won't go into specifics, but people are trying to be innovative and showing that they're not parking on a pavement but might be parking on a verge. But in terms of the law, they are still parking on the pavement. We have over the festive period, it started on the 1st of December, extended the deployment of parking attendants for a 3-month over the festive period. Again, looking for behavioural change. Parking attendants will be operating well beyond what they've currently contracted to. So that will be for targeting pavement parking on double yellow lines, etc., where people think that the parking attendants no longer operate. And again, that is a test of change. That's not in terms of income generation or anything like that. That's to ensure that parking restrictions are being obeyed for the purposes that they have been implemented for, and that's regarding pedestrian and motor vehicle user safety. Thank you.
Just quickly, for the benefit of all councillors, if we all find ourselves having these sorts of disputes, should we report them to you or to Peter Arnsdorf or to a particular individual elsewhere in the council?
Probably in the first case it would be to Wayne Clark, who leads up on roads and transportation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. And a slightly controversial statement from me, but can I thank our parking attendants, who I think probably rarely get thanks, but I have found them to be particularly proactive on pavement parking and reacting to incidents in my ward. So I'll just put that on record. Councillor Alexander.
I have 2 questions. The first one I'll see is the delivery vans. That's what we're talking about, pavement parking. And there's going to be lots of Amazon vans, etc., every whatever. And I already see that, and they park up on the pavement, maybe only for a couple of seconds, not very long. But what is the, what are they meant to do? Because I can see that they've got a time schedule. They've got to do things in a certain amount of time. And, if they're delivering somewhere, it's really hard to deliver, outside a door where they've got to park on the pavement. So that was my first question. The second question, this is the time of year when especially you're going to get a lot of counterfeit stuff. And do we get intelligence on what's coming across the channel, what's on our way to our high streets? And can you actually stop them before they get here?
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. I suppose for the purposes of people watching this, I can say that we do have frequently asked questions on our website, which includes that aspect about delivery vehicles. So delivery drivers can park on the pavement when 2 conditions apply. There must be no reasonable place to park fully on the road, and 2, there is still at least 1.5 metre of pavement width between their vehicle and any wall, fence or bush. If these 2 conditions apply, then the maximum length of time for delivery being parked on the pavement is 20 minutes. And that's for the purposes of loading and unloading, and that's the only exception. If it's just abandoned on the pavement and it blocks the pavement, then if a parking attendant is in the vicinity, a notice will be issued. Could I ask you to repeat the second point, the second question, please, Councillor Alexander?
Yes, it's just about counterfeit goods. So people, this is time of year when there's going to be a lot of that, I presume, in shops, etc. And I just wondered if you get pre-intelligence, so you know what's going to be coming, so you know where to look for counterfeit stuff.
Yeah, thank you for that. Trading standards in particular will be alive to every year, every Christmas. There's the new fad, the new toy that everybody seeks to get for their child or family member, and with that, it opens the door for those to perhaps make counterfeit copies of it. And that, you know, that goes right across the board, from clothing right across the board to toys, as I mentioned. The trouble is that the counterfeit ones haven't gone through the equivalent of what used to be the CE mark in terms of their safety, their flammability, and small bits coming off and presenting choking hazards, etc., etc. The intelligence that trading standards have is nationwide, it's UK wide, and there's also international intelligence that can be shared, and anything that the intelligence suggests that it's coming into the area, marketed in the area, or indeed manufactured in the area, trading standards will engage with those operators, in inverted commas, and take the relevant enforcement action. So if anyone's got any information on it, happy to receive it. And if anyone thinks that they have received a counterfeit product at Christmas time, then again, please report to trading standards.
Thanks, Derek. And I think National Trading Standards are doing some work on this at the moment, so there's some stuff on their website as well. Councillor Alexander. Councillor Curran.
Thanks, Chair. Just a very quick ask for future reports. Under civic licences, Derek, just looking at it, we've got 121 granted licence for liquor licensing applications. I know under most of them, vast majority will be renewals. Would there be any chance of just putting that in future reports? Maybe even in brackets, like 119 of them are renewals. That would be helpful.
Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah, happy to do that, Councillor Curran. We split out the civic government applications on that basis. We'll do the same for liquor licences going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, that would be helpful, because the numbers on presentation do look high, but as Councillor Curran says, there will be renewals mixed in with that as well. Okay, I think we have got to the end of our public reports. There's no private reports today, and the date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 10th of February. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Nice Monday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye.